Thank you all very much for being here tonight. My name is Nora Lee. I'm the Chief Operations Officer for Coastal Heritage Society. The Savannah History Museum is one of Coastal Heritage Society's properties. I just want to thank you all so much for being here and for all of your support for this wonderful history that is going to be shared with you tonight. This is really a wonderful, unique opportunity, and I think you're going to have quite an educational experience tonight. I would invite you all to please come back at another opportunity and visit one of our museums. The Savannah History Museum you've gotten a taste of today. We'll be doing a number of different programs throughout the summer, and we'd love to have you back. So thank you very much for coming, and let us know if we can do anything to help you. Thank you.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. My name is Julie Morgan. I'm an archaeologist with Savannah District, the Corps of Engineers here in Savannah, and I'm also the lead federal archaeologist on the CSS Georgia project. And again, on behalf of the district, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Steve James and Dr. Gordon Watts, who's unfortunately under the weather, have prepared a presentation on what they've been doing out there on the water since January 15 January 2015. And I think you're in for a real treat tonight. I also want to thank Coastal Heritage Society for hosting the event this evening, and to all of the sponsors who provided the refreshments. They were just delicious, and I really appreciate that and want to thank everyone for that. That's okay. Tonight's lecture is the first of many public outreach or involvement activities that the district has planned. And I don't know if you've noticed, we've got several of them, of the screens that are coming through, and this is a list of some of the activities that we're planning. We don't have real dates yet, and I think we're planning one event is a viewing event. We're hoping to schedule something, within the next month or so, but keep your eye out, keep listening, and we're hoping that, like I said, we can schedule something within the next month or so. The district is working with Dahlgren Associates, Gulf Engineers Consultants, to do the work, the public outreach, and we've also reached out to Panamerican Consultants and Tidewater Atlantic Research. Those are the archaeologists who are doing the work for us. And tonight, some of you probably know Rita Elliott. She's actually been working with the Corps and will be instrumental in developing some of these outreach activities for us. Before we move on to the presentation tonight, I just want to give you a little bit of background information as to why the district is doing this data recovery effort. Basically, we're doing it because the vessel is going to be impacted by the Savannah Harbor Expansion Project, all of the deepening activities that will be happening in the next few years. For those of you who aren't familiar with the project, Savannah Harbor Expansion Project, or SHEP, as you may have heard it referred to, is going to be a deepening project. We're going to take the river from its minus 42 depths to minus 47. We're going to add some areas where ships can turn a little and maneuver a little bit easier. And those are the kinds of impacts that are going to actually take out the Georgia this time. We've avoided it for so many years. The district has had kind of I want to say like a love-hate relationship with the Georgia for many, many years. And this time we just can't avoid any impacts to it. So we're doing an archaeological data recovery so we can fulfill our National Historic Preservation Act compliance requirements. Some facts about SHEP. This is going to be a multi-year project. The cost is projected to be just a little bit over $700 million. And the benefits that the nation will receive from this project are expected to be about $170 million annually. And if you want to break that down farther, basically for about every dollar that's invested in the project, there will be a net return of $5.50. So I think that's a great project. And actually, Hope Moore with GPA is with us here in the audience tonight, and she's really been instrumental and a big advocate of the CSS Georgia, and I want to thank her for that. $700 million seems like a lot of money to spend on dredging, but actually about half of that cost is going to natural resources and cultural resources mitigation projects. Some of the natural resources mitigation projects or features that the Corps is going to undertake will involve, we're going to build a fish bypass around the new Savannah Bluff Lock and Dam that's a little bit south of Augusta. We are also looking at building a dissolved oxygen facility, rerouting freshwater flow in the upper part of the harbor, and we're going to preserve just over 2,200 acres of freshwater wetlands in the Savannah National Wildlife Refuge. Our only cultural resources mitigation project is the CSS Georgia. This project, I came into it a little late. We've been working on the deepening project since about the mid-2000s. In 2012 is about when I became the lead archaeologist on the project. And if you've noticed the slides here, you'll see that there's a tribute slide to Judy Wood, and she was actually the project archaeologist for the district and for this project before I took over in 2011, 2012. A lot of the planning that we are implementing now was developed and conceptualized by Judy. And I just want to take a few minutes to say that Judy's not with us anymore. She passed away in March of 2015, but we are still implementing her ideas, trying to fulfill the spirit of what she saw this project, and she really loved the Georgia. And I just wanted to take a few minutes to acknowledge her and the work that she has been doing on the Georgia. Tonight, as I said, our feature presentation is actually going to be about the archaeology that's been going on the CSS Georgia project. As I said, Dr. Gordon Watts couldn't be with us tonight, but Steve James and Parker Brooks, the conservationist or conservator on the project, they are both with us tonight. And they'll be giving a little background from an archaeological perspective, not so much from the historical aspect of the CSS Georgia, but more about how the Corps has dealt with the Georgia, how we are, what we hope to learn, things that maybe we thought we knew about the Georgia and we're discovering weren't necessarily true. But Steve James will be the one to give you more details about that. Just a little background about Steve James. Steve James was with Panamerican Consultants and an underwater cultural resources firm. He's a graduate of the Texas A&M program in underwater archaeology. He's been working with the Savannah District since the 2000s, the early 2000s. His first work on the CSS Georgia was in 2003 when he partnered with Tidewater Atlantic Research with Dr. Gordon Watts. Steve, in addition to the work that's going on here, is also involved with other projects, some of them on the Yazoo River. He's doing some work also in Johnsonville, Tennessee. So he's quite a busy man. They've been out there doing work. And if any of you have been at Old Fort Jackson within the past few months, you've seen their boat out there literally every single day since January of this year. So without any further ado, I'm going to set up the presentation. And Steve can, like I said, give you some background information on what they've been doing out there on the water.
Good evening, folks, and thanks for coming. I'm Stephen James with Panamerican. The CSS Georgia, she was locally built in 1862 with funds raised by the Ladies Gunboat Association. She cost approximately $122,000. She was underpowered. She couldn't stem the tide, she couldn't sail against them, so she spent her life anchored as a gun battery opposite Fort Jackson. There she is right here, Fort Jackson right here, Savannah upriver to the left. She remained in that position for 2 years, guarding the entrance to the city against the Union Navy, keeping them at bay after Pulaski fell. Sherman took Fort McAllister, entered Savannah in the winter of '64. She was scuttled in December, her crew abandoning her and fleeing into South Carolina with the other Confederates in the city. We know very little about the ship itself other than from the lithographs, the Civil War period lithographs in the newspapers, Frank Leslie's Harper's Weekly. The illustration up top, there are approximately 3 to 4 of them. They all are very similar in appearance, showing a barn-like vessel. Her cladding, it's a railroad iron from top to bottom, rails laid on end. This one not really depicting that, but gun ports, single stack. Some depict her with maybe a bow and a stern, others not. The only photograph we thought we knew of was this one right here. Some of you may have read the story. We thought it was an original that had been photographed at a yard sale. It in fact turned out to be, we think now after doing research, the Corps asked the public, does anybody know where this photograph is? And an elder gentleman, he said he actually made it as a high school project, film project. He built the model, photographed it, had his brother stand by the river, photographed him, put the two together, antiqued it by burning it, throwing bleach on it, or whatever you do. And so there it is. Hey, it looks good, doesn't it? But anyway, we do know she looks like this, and in fact, she does so on the bottom. She currently sits opposite Fort Jackson, where she was scuttled, just downriver from the city of Savannah. It's approximately 2 miles. She was hit by a dredge in 1968. Is it Colburn? He, I believe, was on the dredge when they hit it, and if any of you would like to talk to him about the rediscovering the wreck of the Georgia. 68, they hit it, they marked it, but it wasn't archaeologically studied until 1980 when Texas A&M, under a contract with the Corps, came in and put divers on it and conducted remote sensing. What we have here is a sonar record of it. It shows basically one side of the vessel, but it's in 2 pieces. You can see a gun port, you can see the sloping end of it, and these 2 pieces would have attached right here. And here's the channel down here. And as we go through these slides, you'll build upon that same image, but that is essentially the wreck site. They really didn't get a whole lot of data during the 1980 investigation. The Corps went back in 1986. Corps divers, they put together a fairly decent site plan. You've got cannon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 of which they recovered. They're now at Fort Jackson. 2 that they left on site. And then they recovered approximately 100 cannonball and or rifled shell. And here they are. Some are in this building, some are at Fort Jackson. What you have are rifled Brooke shells. You can see the fuses have been taken out. These are Dahlgren smoothbore, basically cannonballs. They have fuses in them. These are live ordnance, still with black powder in them. In 2003, Panamerican, along with Tidewater Atlantic, Dr. Gordon Watts, who's not here, was contracted by the Corps to do another investigation on it as preliminary to the Harbor Expansion Project and what we're working on today. Again, the same, it's a sonar record like the 1980 version. Here's the East Casemate. you can see in the 80 version, this was a complete triangle. The triangle tip has been broken off by what we don't know. A vessel dragging anchor, perhaps, it's still unclear. But it's a better image. Some things that stand out. See the dredge scars? These striations, those are where the dredge head cut through the Miocene clay, just very stiff clay, and it keeps its form, so that was probably 1968, and it looks just like it did today. You have a couple cannon you can't really see. Here's a cannon right here. You can see the railroad, how it's splintered off the casemate. It's kind of like toothpicks or pickup sticks into the water column. But all in all, it gives you a fairly good image of some of the wreck site. Now, our study recently, we extend the site down into this area, and we'll be seeing that in a few slides. Some of the things that we located and recorded in the 2003 investigation, the vessel's propeller. We don't know if it had one propeller or two propellers. When we bring this up, we think we will be able to determine, we will be able to determine whether it was one or two, had one or two propellers. Steam engines, we've got two on the bottom. We don't know how they interacted with the vessel. We do know she was underpowered. That's one of the research questions. Why was she underpowered? Didn't they think it through? What was the weak link? We recorded 3 cannon on the bottom. This is one that we recorded on the bottom, still is on the bottom. This is one of the guns that was brought up during the 86 core dive investigation, where they recovered also the 100 cannonball and shell. That's at Fort Jackson. One of the other things that we recorded was the casemate cross-section. You saw in the sonar they're kind of lying flat. Well, they are lying flat. It's the side of the casemate is just fallen over. And what we have is the railroad iron. It's fastened to the casemate, one up, one down, one up, one down. And that's what, unlike other ironclads that are generally covered with iron plating, they didn't have plate, so they used railroad iron. They used what they had. She's backed by 2 feet of solid wood. She was then. Now the wood is mostly deteriorated. There's what's called we call it a teredo worm. It's basically a bivalve. It's like a sea termite. It eats wood. Most of the wood is gone. But we do know from several locations that that's how she was backed. In 2013, we did a multi-beam survey. It's kind of like a fish finder. If some of you folks have boats and you go fishing, a fish finder, it paints a little picture, but it's basically it's a single beam pinging off the bottom. This has multi-beams, just hundreds of beams that cut across in a swath. Here we're setting it up. It's all satellite positioned, and then the actual instrument is about 20 foot down, and we did the survey with that to get this map right here. This is a high resolution terrain site map. The different colors indicate basically contours, height and depth. The blues are deeper. This is the channel. One thing that sticks out are the big, once again, the striations of the dredge head. Cutting through this clay, and you can see how they've gone into the wreck. They go right up to, and they must have moved pieces of this around. But then they knew the wreck was there in '68, and then this is where they stopped dredging from then on out. This is the main shipping channel. You've got your channel markers here. Savannah's down to the left. What you have here are several things. Once again, the east casemate, the west casemate, cannon 1, 2. 1, 2, and 3. The multi-beam showed us where cannon number 4 was. We never knew where it was at. The multi-beam also it has accuracy within inches, in some places centimeters. So it's a very accurate site map. And that's what we base all our current archaeology on in the water. This is another product of the Multibeam was the Rec Site program. This is a 3D kind of fly-through video game kind of program that we're going to see once the PowerPoint presentation is given. Here's Cannon 4. It was the Rec Site program that you could actually see the cannon. You could see the Trunnion and the Cascabel. It jumps out at you. It's obviously a cannon. In 2013, there was also it was a recovery of a section of the casemate for integrity testing to conduct engineering studies on the piece of casemate in preparation for lifting the entire casemate. The engineering studies were directed at finding the bend and breaking strengths of the railroad iron, which would dictate the lifting mechanisms and the crane loads and all that engineering stuff that I don't do. I'm an archaeologist. But right here is the Corps brought the Navy in. That's the Superintendent of Salvage, Barge, and Crane, or Soup Salve. And the divers were the Mobile Diving Salvage Unit 2, which were our Navy divers, or Mudsu divers. This, okay, there's your visual view of the site. Now, if we go to the site map, with everything positioned electronically, we have our site map and we have our barge placed over that site. We have our surveyors. Some of our archaeologists are surveyors. Andy in the back of the room, standing next to Lauren. There are several archaeologists in here. They can answer questions after the talk if you're so inclined. He's our computer guru and plays with satellite positioning and gets us on site. But once again, you've got your west casemate, east casemate. That's the barge that you saw, and here's the channel. The Navy used our diver tracking system that we employ, all again satellite-based and based on the site map that we have. You can see the transponder that talks to the computers that you can see on at the dive station on the computer monitor. These are the Mudsu Navy divers during the lift of the casemate. The diver tracking system, you can track the diver in real time. Here's his track, and he appears as a little fish. He's walking to cannon number 3. I mean, you can literally put the person on a dime. We did it once again today, or yesterday, no, was it today? We recovered an artifact that we had left down there. It was too heavy for the first lift, so we walked right back to it. Lauren, one of our divers, she did the dive today, and it just works remarkably. It is total zero visibility underwater, and you've got to have a system like this. Here's the piece of casemate coming up. It's a smaller piece. This is below one of the gun ports. Here it's being lifted. Here it is on deck. It traveled to Texas A&M, to the Conservation Research Lab first, and then their engineering department. Here it's a section of it's cut in profile, and you can see the rails. One up, one down, one up, one down. And this would have been on top of 2 feet of lumber fastened to 2 foot thick timber wall. One of the interesting things here, okay, the wood for the most part is gone. The fasteners are eaten away as well. So really the only thing holding this casemate together is the corrosion product, which is very interesting. But anyway, the engineering department ran a bunch of strength and bend tests on it, and they've given that information to the Navy engineers who are going to be lifting it here shortly, several weeks or months. Currently, we began our archaeological investigation in January. I think the first dive was January 10th. Believe me, the water was freezing, about 42 to 45 degrees. It was a cold winter for you who live in Savannah. We thought it was cold. But anyway, some of the research issues, not totally associated with the archaeological aspect we're conducting, but they focus some of our questions of the artifacts that we recover. But one is the salvage records. There are some indications that some parts of the vessels may have been salvaged and then dumped again. We just don't know. And then the archaeological research, the pieces that we bring up, say like the propellers and the engines and the casemate. How was she designed? How was she constructed? The machinery and performance, again, the engines and the propeller, that will go a long way to telling us why she was underpowered and could only be used as a ram. Currently, once again, we started in January 10th was our first dive. We've been going down the list, and these are our objectives prior to the Navy getting here for the big lift. We deployed our moorings. That's what we tie our dive vessel to every day. We stretch baselines as any good archaeologist does. We have lines going to the basic cannons from datum points that we set for our web restoration. The datum points allowing us to calibrate the system, make sure all our satellites are, everything's lined up to where then we can send our diver out. We totally mapped the site. We've identified all the large components. We currently start tomorrow on our test excavations. We have finished our small artifact recovery. We'll discuss all of these aspects in a little greater detail. And the casemate documentation was one of the biggies, getting the data that the Navy will need to raise these pieces, because that will be the hardest part of this project. So our archaeological objectives, we had to identify on the multi-beam some of the larger components. Boiler, possibly. We see it on the map. Boilers or dredge pipe maybe. Well, in fact, our investigation shows us this is a pipe culvert like you'd build a road over, in a farm or somewhere. How it got there, who knows. These were logs. They have transited off-site. You have whole trees blowing by us during some of the floods this winter. There's a lot of miscellaneous trees. One of the first things we had to do was cut a huge cedar tree that had drifted down and become entangled in the baseline right here. But we've reset our datums, we've run our baselines, we've run our lines to the cannons for easy transits, to the propellers and some of the other objects like the small casemate. That will be one of the first casemates to be lifted. But once again, you can see your dredge scars, and that the site basically encompasses this area. Okay, so as archaeologists, you grid off a site and then you begin excavating in units. Your provenience is critical for archaeology. And to get our provenience on this site, we have developed an electronic grid. These are 10-foot by 10-foot electronic grids. They're not on the bottom, they're only on the computer. You can see them up top. The diver doesn't see them. Again, zero visibility. We send the diver down into one of these units, and he or she goes down with the artifact recovery bag, basket, puts it in the center of the unit. We do a clockwise rotation. They describe everything on the bottom that they feel. Oh, this is a cannonball. It's at 3 o'clock, 2 feet out, and we draw it on the surface. We have communication systems from the diver to the surface, and that's how we record everything on the bottom. Then they put whatever artifacts deemed recoverable into the basket, and we bring it up. We're only allowed to bring up the small stuff. The cranes are going to bring up the big stuff starting later June. But 10-foot increments, and everything's assigned a unit number. Every artifact gets a unit number where it comes out, and we draw pictures of all the units, and that's how we do our archaeology. Okay, the diving system we use. We've got Lauren here. She's one of our lead divers with Jeff Pardee, I believe, here. He's in a surface supply. It's a Kirby Morgan 27. His umbilical, that's all his air, his communications, and his pneumo. We need to know, the black one is his pneumo gauge. It tells us on the surface how deep he is, because you have to run his bottom times and his versus relative to his depth for a nitrogen buildup. So you can only stay down so long at certain depths. And it differs as the tide falls and rises, because sometimes 8, 12-foot tidal difference. But here he is going in. There's the diver beacon that we follow him with in our diver tracking system. This is just a shot from Fort Jackson. Here's our workboat. Once again, the channel marker. You can see the two moorings. They're tied off to either sections of the Casemate, one on the west Casemate upriver, one on the east Casemate downriver. Here's the environment we work in. There's that channel marker again. You see how close that guy is? That is a big boat, let me tell you. And he was about 10 foot from that channel marker. You can barely see our mooring anchors. We let him go by before we tied up. Here's one going by. They go by often all day long during the high tides, some days more than others. It's a real dynamic site, one of which is the vessel traffic. And that's the reason we're doing it, is to allow bigger and better ships that can haul more to come on up. So we're getting this wreck out of the way, that way, or just totally out of the way so they can expand the channel this way. Some of the other things, we can only dive the tides because it is a tidal river. Like I said, the general tide is about an 8-foot fall up and down. With the full moon like it is now, it can go up to 12. And if there's flood upriver, that creates higher currents as well. So you can't dive the currents. You got to wait till the tide either bottoms out or tops out. It's not a long dive window, and when the currents start running, you've got to get out because you just can't work against it. We recover all our artifacts from the various units, and I'm going to let Parker tell you about some of our recoveries. He is from Texas A&M, specifically the Conservation Research Lab. It is the premier shipwreck conservation lab in the country, and if not one of the biggest ones in the world. And with that introduction, Parker, you take it away on the artifacts.
Well, howdy everyone. Like Steve said, I'm Parker Brooks. I'm with Texas A&M and the Conservation Research Lab. I'm a graduate student there, and well, these dirty things are what I do. So what I want to talk about here today is just kind of the things we find. Right now we're focusing on the small artifact recovery. So what does that mean? That means things that they can put in a basket and we can bring up by hand. So examples, what do we have? Well, the two pictures on the screen right now, we have this cap square. Well, that right there, that's that wonderful bronze thing that's sitting over there. So what this did effectively, it sat on the top of the gun carriage. This would be used to hold the cannon in place while firing. When it'd fire, it'd recoil, it'd go backwards. How do you make sure that doesn't buck out of place, hurt somebody, generally just cause a nuisance. That's what that is. Another really cool artifact we found, and we don't see these hardly ever, there's very few examples we found, is this right here. I did not bring it tonight. That's a roller handspike. Effectively what this is a big pry bar they could use when the cannon would fire on this. It's a Marcelli carriage. You can't turn it left or right, but when you shoot, it will sure come backwards. So how do you move a gun that weighs a couple of tons back into place? You're not going to shove on that, and it only has wheels in the front. Come on. Okay. So what that is, it's a big bronze head on that with an iron wheel that sits on the bottom. And they would lever that under the base of the gun carriage to roll that cannon back into place to fire again. And these are some of the really cool things we see, These are hard to find, and you can see down on the far end, that's been underwater for 150 years. I've done minimal, if not hardly any work on that. That's just before we staged this to send it back to Texas to be clean, be conserved. That's what bronze looks like. And that leads me to my next talking point. As you can see, we have two pieces that look identical. Well, have the same shape, not identical. Also, the one that looks a little off is made of iron. What those are the eyes for tackle. Those will be used, and I'll get to more about those in a second, but those were used on the gun carriage as well. So why does that one look so much different than that one? Well, the one on the right is made of iron. Effectively, underwater, iron doesn't like to be iron. It corrodes. Steve showed you in the Casemate section that it's only held together by the concretion products in between the rails. So what does that mean for us? Well, at Texas A&M, the Conservation Research Lab, we try to fix this. We're going to try and bring this back to life. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to x-ray it, we're going to see what the interior looks like. We're going to strip away that concretion, we're going to place it in an electrolysis bath. That's going to help us restore the metal, remove the excess concretion, get it back to original surface. From there, what we can do is we can seal that surface off with tannic acid, with boiling, with microcrystalline wax. We can keep this from corroding further and make it look as good as possible. So here we've got more artifacts from our wonderful divers. We have the sabot in, well, the picture on the left. So what is this? When the cannon would fire, effectively the Civil War was one of the first modern wars. This one people put a lot of thought into how they could hurt someone else, how to break things. So, as cannons became rifled, as the barrels, they had grooves cut in them, this would make the shell a lot more accurate. Well, how do you make a cannonball fly straighter? It's round, the air's going out any way you put it in. So, this particular sabot goes to a 6.4-inch Brooke shell. So, they would take the ball, strap it down, and this disc on the back would be used to be fitted to the rifles. It prevent gas from escaping behind the round, or in front of the round, making it fly that much further, that much straighter. The thing on the right, that's a firing mechanism to one of the cannons. If we go back, on top of that gun is that hammer. We also found right next to it, if you can see right there, that's a sight. We've recovered that. These are bronze artifacts that just look almost like the day they were made. A little bit of cleaning, we can hopefully find the serial numbers on these that match up to the identical cannon. Now, here, what I want to go back to about those eyes for tackle, I showed you them previously. We had the matching X's. Well, that was a pretty major revelation for us. Originally, we thought they were just straight Marsilli carriages on this wreck. So, that means they would fire back and forth. If y'all been out to Fort Jackson or Fort Pulaski, you've seen the guns they can turn left or right, pivot carriages. They have iron track along the base and a semicircle. They can move these left or right. Well, that right there indicated we had something different than we originally thought. Because the details were so scarce, we predicted one thing, and by finding these artifacts, we had to find things like this that redevelop entirely how we think about life was on this ship, how things were laid out. Well, where do I fit into this? A lot of this work is done at Texas A&M, but these things have to go from here to Texas. How do they come from the river and shipped across the country? What I do is, thankfully, the Corps of Engineers has been nice enough to let me use the survey shack. There, what I can do is I've set up a field conservation lab. There, I take the artifacts in, they've given me a number, or they've given me a grid square, locations where these come from. So there, I further identify, I number, I accession, record, photograph, generally get all the information we can about these artifacts, digitize it, and prep it to be shipped to Texas. Right now, we've pulled up over 1,500 artifacts in 6 months, and we're predicting quite a few more. Once these casemate sections start coming up, it's roughly 6 rails a foot. And as Steve said, the west casemate is around 60 feet long. That's how many we're looking at. Plus associated fasteners, wood fragments, things buried under the casemate. So we're going to have quite a job ahead of us, and we're very excited to be a part of this. So, what exactly do we do? If y'all came and saw me in the lobby, you see these, the leg irons that we found aboard the ship. They didn't start looking at that. We started over here on the left. They're iron. They're completely concreted with the corrosion products. Marine growth. Things are living on these. And I promise you, if you got too close to the grape shot, you can smell it. So, what we do, we got it to Texas, we x-ray it. This way we can see what's left on the inside. What iron is still there, how much it's corroded, if it's broken on the interior. Things like this can happen. But that gives us a nice clear image. I did not expect that ring to be there. But sure enough, we x-rayed it, and it survived. Who knew? So, what we did after that, we took it out. We used a pneumatic chisel. We call them air scribes. I believe, where are they made? Chicago Pneumatics, maybe. Well, what we do, we remove the excess concretion. After that, it goes into electrolytic reduction. It's an electrolysis bath with a very high pH that we use to reduce the iron back to a more stable state. After that, it's in there for several months. Unfortunately, it's a time-intensive process. And as much as we have to do, it's going to take several years to get through the entire ship, whatever is chosen to be conserved. So, after that, the product I've brought you today is a cast. The original is still undergoing electrolysis back at A&M. This is something we can bring and show you all the tangible results. What there is, what it looked like 150 years ago when the ship went down. And that brings us to the UXO phase. And Steve can come back out here for this.
Okay. The next phase, when the archaeological phase ends this week, the Navy comes in at the latter part of June. Their first focus is to recover the unexploded ordnance, or the UXO, off the site, and they come in two forms. One, these are actually UXO, but the ordnance is considered to have UXO in them. The large cannon that they recovered that's now at Fort Jackson, it was spiked, it had a shell stuck in it backwards, so it couldn't be used by the Union, or readily used. And we expect these to be the same. There's 3 heavy guns and 1 small gun. At least the 3 heavy guns have to be assumed to be spiked as well with a shell in them. The cannon recovery locations, we've got the small 6-pounders, shoots solid shot. That shouldn't be a problem. We've got cannon 2 and 3, those are big guns, and then cannon 4 in the channel will be recovered along with the UXO. This is an older map, and a couple explanations here. Once again, these are our units, our 10 by 10 units. The red X's are, we're Xing them off as we record them and recover the artifacts from them. So these have all been mapped. Well, the little small black X's are where we're finding UXOs. And you can see how they're clustering. There's a little cluster around Cannon 3. There are a couple just here and there, but there's a large cluster here. This was about, this map was, and I apologize, this isn't the up-to-date map. Now we have UXO all over here. They go down, and there's a huge cluster around Cannon 4 in the channel. And we have approximately 68 UXO that will be recovered first before anything else is done. And that will be done by the Marines and the Navy divers. They will be inerted, inert. Fuses taken out, drilled, the gunpowder taken out, and once they are inerted, they'll be shipped to Texas A&M for conservation. After the UXO and ordnance are recovered, then we go into the large recovery and lift phase. First, the large artifacts will come up. That's really the easy stuff, the propellers and the engines. And then we go into the casemates. Casemates are going to be tough. Large recovery items, we've got propellers, we've got engine cylinders here, we've got hawse pipes, got one down here, one over here. And really not a lot of large recovery items, but the casemates, once again, that'll be the first casemate that comes up. They want to try and get this up whole. That actually is the one end of the vessel. That's one complete end of the vessel. And then the east casemate and the west casemate, which comprise the one side of the vessel. Once all the casemate is cleared and up, we have to go into mechanized recovery. There's just too much railroad iron down there to manually lift it by a diver to like sling a chain on it or a strap. It would literally take years. There's so much down there. We're going to grapple for the railroad iron, and then we're going to clamshell the remainder of the site. All of it will be brought up onto a barge and washed through, and all the artifacts collected, and once again sent to Texas A&M for conservation. Then some of the artifacts will be redeposited. There's a lot of iron plate and just thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of fasteners down there that are so redundant. And conservation is not cheap, so you don't want to conserve all these things. So what do you do with them? Well, we're identifying a location that we can redeposit them in the, it hasn't been identified yet, but we just can't spend that amount of money to conserve redundant artifacts, so we're going to redeposit it. It will be in a location that they can be restudied, dug back up if need be. The conservation methods, I'll just go through this real quick. No, Parker, come on back out.
You can speak, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm here with you, but... Okay, well, I guess I'm back. Hi, everyone, again. So, what the conservation methods? Pretty much, when these artifacts come up, I've started talking already about what we have to do to the iron, what things have to happen. Well, field stabilization, what I'm doing is storing these so that they're not corroding further. The iron doesn't degrade itself, so the wood isn't just rotting away, or doesn't dry out. Unfortunately, wood that's been underwater for 150 years, becoming dry is its biggest enemy. At that point, the cells will collapse. They've been degraded by oversaturation over such a period of time. The iron, again, drying out could be a big issue. I've kept these damp for a pretty short period here, so, but we can still fix it. So when these artifacts come up, they have to be stabilized. I have to put them in iron, brass, things like that, in a solution of a very an alkaline solution that stops further corrosion to them. Wood I have to keep wet. Brass, pretty similar. They're going to go to Texas. They're going to go to the treatment I've already talked about. Electrolysis, we're going to make sure the surface is sealed off from the exterior once we finish that, just to make sure it doesn't corrode again. And then we have our public outreach. I believe we've lost Julie. Rita? And she can explain this to you.
Hello. Well, y'all are actually number one. You are part of the very first public outreach we're doing for this project. So the CSS Georgia project has 8 public outreach events or activities, 2 public lectures. This is the first one. The next one will be the last one. It'll be after all the field work is done and when some of the interpretations have already been done. And you'll hopefully come back, perhaps to a bigger arena, and learn all about what it is that the archaeologists have discovered in the interim in the upcoming year. The next thing to come up, though, immediately will be a Raise the Wreck public viewing day at Fort Jackson. So we invite you to stay tuned. It's probably going to be in July. We don't have the date yet. That depends on how quickly they get the unexploded ordnance out of here. And then we'll pick up part of the Casemate or some other exciting part of the shipwreck for you to see. So there'll be a big festival, so stay tuned for that. There'll be a Teachers Institute in the summer of 2016, CSS Georgia exhibit booth materials produced, a traveling teaching trunk, digital archives. So all this cool information is not going to go away. It's going to be put on the internet on the Museum of Underwater Archaeology, where people around the world can look at it and study it, and of course you can access it as well, all for free. Also, there'll be a CSS Georgia video documentary film produced about not only the project, but the history of the ship and all sorts of good stuff about the vessel. Also, there'll be an Archaeology Month poster and education packet produced about the CSS Georgia and the project in 2017. So lots going on. We invite you to participate and come out and join us at the public viewing days as soon as we set the date. Thank you.
Final thing we do as archaeologists, we have to write a report. And it's a scientific document. It'll be a few years, but looking forward to it. Amendments, the vessel is on the National Register of Historic Places. We have to amend that form. We will be giving our findings at various archaeological conferences, and then back at Texas A&M there will be master's and doctoral theses coming out of the conservation. Now I want to say thank you for coming, but it's still not over because we're going to go do the rec site image right now, and if Casey is there and can help, he was just out there. Do you know how to do it?
No, I can't. How many people does it take?
Should be minimized down here. Is this it?
Yes, that's it.
More than we have.
Okay, Dawn, let's see. Okay, this is our 3D imaging, and I will pick out one of the images. and it doesn't do it justice on the on this screen. If you do it on a computer, a high-powered computer, you can basically fly through it. But this is the East Casemate. You can see under it. You can see the kind of a lack of wood. You can see some pieces. This the piece on the bottom is that's the triangular piece that's been damaged. This is the front or back side of the actual vessel. This is one end of it. What we're coming around to is here's a smaller section of Casemate, but this is that Canon 4, and I can't really manipulate the computer, but when we fly into it, you can really see it's a Canon, and that's how we located Canon 4 was by this presentation. But with it running, that is it, and I guess we can take questions, but thank you for coming.